Uh, my pleasure to welcome to our podcast Mr. Anthony Ceja
Yeah.
of a bright, shining light in the community of restorative justice in San Diego County. Uh, Anthony, I know that you are responsible for a whole lot, but could you just give us a thumbnail of your job description?
Sure. I'm in the System of Supports department within the Student Services and Programs division. So and what I do mostly is work around promoting restorative justice practices in the schools, in the 42 school districts and the juvenile court and community schools in our county, which is obviously very large. Um,
Yes.
yeah.
How many students are there in these 40 some
In
districts?
You know what? I think in the county, I don't know the exact number. I'm not sure if there was like a half a million students or something.
Yeah,
Just amazing.
I think you're right. I think actually it might be a little north of 500,000.
Wow.
Uh, Especially, I mean, if you count preschool and uh, and the like. So it's a lot of kids, and I know you have just an amazing staff to help you with your efforts.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's really we have a great team of people. And it's when you're part of the county office, a lot of times you have some people that are with you, but they're also they have these other responsibilities because they're maybe funded by a grant or something like that. That's typical. And so when they have their other time, they can help you with certain things. We don't have a lot of people besides myself who I would say their complete focus is this work that we're talking about today.
yeah. Well, I know one of your right hand people is Jen Vermillion. And
She's
Jen,
amazing.
I had the pleasure of getting to know Jen in, it's about 10 years ago. She was a student at the Kroc Peace and Justice uh, program at the University of San Diego. And she was in my classroom helping to train students how to be circle facilitators as an undergraduate. And
Beautiful.
since then, she and I have teamed up to do some trainings. And I know Felicia
Uh-huh.
Singleton, although she's married now,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
uh,
her. That's the name that she still uses
she's
though.
still using it
Yeah.
professionally. Yeah, when
Yeah.
she was at the San Diego Unified, and they are two.
Powerhouses.
Oh boy, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you got the best of the best there. That's
Oh
for
yeah.
sure,
Yeah.
and
So
it's fortunate.
we're doing the best that we can. And I've been fortunate to have bosses over the past probably I'll say 8 years that have allowed me kind of the freedom to develop trainings and offer those trainings to our educators countywide. Um, and at this point, I mean, over 10,000 of them have come to different trainings that we've restorative practices trainings that we've provided. And it's been, I think, over these past 8 years, we've been allowed to really plant those restorative seeds in the educational field here in San Diego County. And I can see how, slowly but surely it starts to change a mindset. You begin to see some of those people have moved into leadership positions, and you see it, they're promoting it in their policies. And it's a beautiful thing to see the language in their LCAPs and things like this. There's still a lot more work to do, believe me. But yeah, but I want to acknowledge, all those people at the County Office of Ed who have allowed me to really do this work. They trusted me, and that's a big deal for me.
Oh, it's you know at whatever level you're at. I know that the first one of the first things I discovered when I started teaching in the classroom was that you don't get anywhere until the kids trust you, and that in today's world, unfortunately, you got to earn that trust. It
That's
doesn't
right.
just come.
Yeah.
Back in Nebraska when I was in school and, in elementary, you respected your teacher. And if
That
you
was it.
didn't, you got a yardstick on the rear or a ruler on your hand. And it was
Right.
painful if you did not respect that.
That's right.
It's a different world today.
Yeah.
And I think the kids deserve it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
To a
They,
degree.
I always feel like, teachers, administrators, all of us who work in education or any public agency, we really need to understand we come in as servants of the community. So that means we should come in with complete humility that we have a privilege to be paid to serve, and we have good jobs and we have good benefits, and every day should be a privilege to just say, hey, this is it's a different time than when I grew up, but that's okay. The kids, like you said they deserve us to gain their trust, to show them that we truly do care on a daily basis through every interaction, that we're basically proving to them, even if you've been harmed in the past and people have demeaned and devalued you, I am not going to do that. I am going to honor you. I am going to, in every interaction, I mean that, in every time that we interact, I am going to do my best to honor you and to show you how much I value you.
Well, I've had the privilege of being in several of your trainings, and I remember one. Uh, it was a while ago, but I just remember and when you talk, we don't see it on the screen, but you're expressive with your hands, in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. And I remember you saying what we do so often are things that push the students away.
Yeah.
And what we have to concentrate is how we can bring them in close.
Yeah.
And in terms of a goal for all of this work, that's as succinct as I've ever heard. I mean, it really, really is. Let me ask you, how did you get involved in restorative justice? And
It was one of
what
my
was the hook?
bosses. Yeah, well, my colleague, friend, and he at the time he was my assistant superintendent, I believe at the time. He had taken me to a training on the disproportionate discipline that was being used not only in San Diego County but across the country within the schools. And it was the data was clear that kind of disproportionate discipline, that there was racism involved in it, because the numbers clearly showed that. And then it became really clearly that it was pushing kids out, like you were saying just a minute ago, pushing kids out where they didn't feel that you cared, and they felt like, why do I want to go to school where I can go connect? I got to go find people who actually care for me. And they started connecting with, unfortunately, there are adults out in the community who are happily willing to take our kids and manipulate them for their own benefit. And then many of those kids got caught up in that school to prison pipeline. So when we saw that data, I remember we came out, it was in San Diego Unified that had hosted that training. We came out, we said, we have to do something to restore the soul of the school so they can that they can really understand that what we're up against. And so we researched it and we said, restorative practices, restorative justice kinds of seems to us to be the one thing that maybe we could promote in the schools as a way to kind of encourage them, inspire them to do things differently. Because if they stay on the old paradigm, it will never work, because the data was really clear on that. And so, but the thing is, many people misunderstand the role of the County Office of Education, because many times people have come to me, they're like, Anthony, you guys should just tell all the districts they have to do it this way. And I'm like, we can't do that. Every school district has their own governing body that's voted in, and including the County Office of Ed. And we're here to serve them, to serve all those districts and provide them leadership and inspiration and support. So I said, so basically we had to do like what you talked about, Steve, with the students. We had to win them over. We have to show the school districts and the schools out there that we care, that they can trust us, and that we have something of value to offer them. Because otherwise, they're like, "Oh, we don't need you," you know. And so I was really, really impressed with my boss at the time that said, "Yeah, Anthony, let's go with this." And then he actually kind of helped me kind of get it started. And then I just felt like when I embraced this restorative justice work, it felt like something something came alive in me, and that I felt like I was almost perfectly aligned with who I am as a human being, and even in my spirituality and my faith, everything just came into alignment.
You know, I think that, it's a calling, a lot like teaching is. If you're going to be good at it, you are called to it.
Yeah.
And it is, it's, well, we agree that it's amazing work. And do you know a Luis Lopez from Sweetwater?
Yes, I do. He's fantastic.
There's a podcast here on my site. He's been charged by the powers that be with charting the course for a restorative system, top to bottom.
Wow.
And you might want to give that one a listen.
Yeah, thank you. I just was communicating with him, with some of my colleagues. They're doing some work on the social emotional learning and how to promote that. He's done a great job
Oh,
of helping with that in Sweetwater. And actually, this coming week, I'm going to be providing it as one of the, like, almost like a guest speaker within their series of trainings they're doing about, like, what does a restorative school look like?
yeah.
Yeah.
And well, I first met Luis when he was teaching a freshman class called Prep for Success. Kids who've had certain challenges, they're ninth graders.
Huh.
And I was training for teen courts. And he was also, not only is a great teacher, but he was a great advocate. He talked me into training ninth graders, which typically don't work because most of our offenders in teen court are older. They're typically juniors and seniors. And
Uh-huh.
the gap, I thought, would be just too great between a ninth grader, somebody 14, 15, and somebody 17, 18. That 18-year-old might not feel so comfortable with somebody that young. And I turned out he was right and I was wrong. They played minimal roles in their ninth grade years, but they ultimately turned out to be leaders in the in the Sweetwater movement, not only in teen court but becoming advocates for. Before COVID, we were trying to get state law to fund teen courts in high schools, and they were lobbying legislators, and these were kids again that came out of the ninth grade. So he certainly changed my attitude on that count. And and as you're talking, I've always had, and I think we've had this discussion before, the feeling that that the kids are our best asset, and that as a system we utilize them so little. And my bias is towards finding people who are truly interested and training them deeply, and then training the kids as facilitators, the kids to run the teen court, the kids to do peer mediation, and have the kids go out on campus and facilitate circles. And the growth in that case is organic. The teachers that poo-pooed it, all of a sudden now they have students coming to them and say, Mr. Smith, we need a circle in here. And I get a call from the guy who at first said, hey, we'd like to come over. Nah, I'm not interested. Now they're started to call in. And that organic growth is real growth.
Yeah.
You know, it's not somebody that feels good about a training as they're leaving. They get down and they have so much on their plate, they just never really get to it.
That's right. And that, by the way, that's a picture of the restorative community, like kind of a limited version of restorative practices in a school, for example, would be, yeah, oh, okay, the staff kind of, you know, they run the circles and they'll run the restorative conferences as needed, and they'll do this and they'll do that. But you're only going to have a certain amount of success by doing that. If you want to go to like a whole other level, is to do what you just said, and from the beginning begin to nurture the leadership that is right there. They're the majority of the people in our schools, the students, and so they should be seen as our primary resource, even from a very young age. I always tell people, because they'll say, well, can a second grader really do restorative practices? I'm like, have you ever seen a first grader or even a kindergartner when another child is crying or they're sad? What do? They come and they hug them, because a lot of them naturally are empathic people. They know to show empathy and compassion. I said, and that is restorative practices in its core. That human connection where they do what you have on the screen there. They find common ground. They are a human being who has suffered before. In some ways, they've been sad, so now they can feel for somebody who is sad right now, and they can say to them in some ways through their actions, I care about you. You're not alone. Come here. Let me hug you. And when you do that, you have now really tapped into the power in schools, just like what you were saying.
Yeah. And there's great programming for the little ones. Seeds of Compassion was actually developed by the Dalai Lama.
Wow.
And it is actually in Oregon and Washington, and I believe Maryland. The legislature have required that as elementary school curriculum.
Wow.
Yeah, and they start with they're starting in preschool. There's stuff out there that really is showing to be quite effective for the little ones.
Yeah,
that's beyond my pay grade. I have.
But you know what? That's where it starts.
Absolutely.
And by the way, if you do that with that preschooler or that kindergartner or that first grader or that fifth grader, by the time they get to that ninth grade class, they are an empowered human being.
Yes.
Now, if by the opposite is this, if you as an adult just keep, teaching this and kind of pouring knowledge into them and pouring knowledge and then asking them to regurgitate it on tests, and you do that for 9 years, you have pretty much an oppressed young person that just has learned this. I just want to regurgitate knowledge to these people to give me my good grade, which is worthless. And so what we want to do is we want to raise empowered young people so that when they're in the ninth grade, they already know this. I have a purpose here. I have a calling. Not just the teachers have a calling. I have a calling to be a healer of my community, to be a restorer, to be somebody who helps to heal the harms that have been done to my peers.
Yeah, and another thing I think that I picked up in large measure from you and from Luis is the concept that what we're really teaching with restorative work is a way of life. It's not a technical class that you need to pass. Right. It's intending to help inform how one might live their life,
Yes.
in the choices that they make. And Luis says that, we are human beings and we are in a constant need of restoration. Each of us, it's the human condition.
Yes.
And that's why, that's really what hooked me, because it is so much more pervasive than a class that you get a grade in, or whatever else you do.
Yeah.
And I tell you, another thing that I've learned from you, um, uh, I practiced law for 30 years, and I'm very partial to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And especially for me, it's very important to keep church and state separate.
Yeah.
You make it very clear, as you did here, that you are a man of, and actually I believe, great faith. And to this day, I've known you for years now. To your credit, I have no idea what your religion is.
Mhm.
You're a man of faith. Your teaching is all secular. Applies to the atheist as well as the priest.
That's right.
And that's a very, for somebody who is as focused as I am on that issue, I can tell you that you are extremely skilled. But and if this is too personal, just tell me. We
Yeah.
can go on
Okay.
to another question. But
Mhm.
how does your religion inform your work,
Yeah.
being mindful of the separation of church and state, which I know that you are very mindful of?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that question, because it's a very personal but deep and important question. And for me, that's why I was saying that when I kind of learned the need for the restoration of, really honestly, social justice, human rights in our school, which was connected to the fact that we had been harming, mistreating kids by the overuse of discipline, by the basic, I shouldn't even use the word discipline, by the overuse of punishment and alienating them and things like that. It made me kind of like, question and say, this is a social injustice, and these young people are being harmed. And am I willing to stand up for what is right? Because if I believe in it, like in the faith that I have, it's one, like you said earlier, like restorative practices is a way of life. I see my faith as a way of life. I don't really see it as kind of like, oh, I got to go to a building and kneel down and pray. And so I'm more like, it's really what informs the way I live. And so I saw that restorative practices align so well with pretty much everything that I believed. And I said, if I'm about truly caring for the harmed, the ones who are oppressed, as my faith informs me, I have to promote this work in the schools, because that's where the harm is being done, and that's where the ones who are oppressed are walking. And so that's where I found I was able to really just meld it together as one. And I think that's why you felt that, that I could authentically do that with a passion and a heart and a spirit, I guess I would even say, that you can feel. As my friend Steve, as you could feel that when you're in the circle. It's something that it resonates with human beings, right? Who are not just like, this kind of fleshy being, right? We have a heart, we have a soul, we have something, a psyche, we have a subconscious, we have, like, we're so amazing as a human being. You can feel when, like you said earlier, everyone needs restoration. So when you're in a circle and somebody listens to you and they don't judge you and they just acknowledge you and thank you, that is a restorative moment. You as a human being feel it. It's not just like some kind of psychological, okay, well, that was nice. No, it's something. As a human being, it tells you, I'm valuable enough for Steve to acknowledge me and to actually in public value me and lift me up and provide me the dignity that I deserve as a human being. And that to me is spiritual work. It should be all connected.
I I agree with you 100%. I know that Um, when we train kids for the teen court, I'm frequently asked, well, what are the benefits, and what sort of things get you to experience the benefits. And to me, in the teen court setting, this is a young person who's been charged with an actual crime, and his peers are going to resolve it. But it is uh, uh, the opportunity to speak and be heard by peers in a non-judgmental way.
Mhm.
This is something that these kids at home or at school, or even with their friends, they just don't get a chance to experience. And you can just see they'll come into the court and they got this chip on their shoulder. And by the end of the trial, they're really expressing themselves. Tears often come to this tough guy with he's gonna, my way or the highway. I can beat you up. And all of a sudden, he's in tears, or she is in tears, just because they realize these people care about what I have to say. And how did we get to a point in our system where kids feel that way? It's just so frustrating to me, because I don't understand the reason for it. I mean,
Yeah.
how did we get here?
Yeah.
Uh,
Partly when you have there's like power, and you have like, especially like a big institution, you have bureaucracies, you get more and more rules and laws, and like, I mean, it's like, if you look at like the amount of ed code there is and stuff, it's like overwhelming. um and so what ends up happening is, as the more complex it all gets, and all this, you start to lose like your reason for even being in as a teacher or as a educator. It starts to become almost oppressed out of you. And that's why what we're doing is we're trying to reawaken the original calling that every educator hopefully heard, and they can rediscover it, because that is the passion that is ultimately going to enable them and empower them to make a true difference, and to do the things that you said, that can maybe value a child for the first time in their life in the school, right? That they can feel like somebody is actually caring enough to listen to me, even if maybe I was the worst kid of the school or the class,
yeah.
but they took the time. They took the time to listen to me. And you know what it does is it brings like a restoration, a healing that sometimes will bring people to tears. They're just like, they don't even know it consciously, but subconsciously they've been like a starving for this healing and acknowledgement as a human being. I'm important. I'm valuable, right? I have a place that I belong right here.
Yeah. In the teen court, the kids are trained to fulfill every function except for that of an adult judge. And the bailiff, who's charged with keeping order in the court, we never have a problem with keeping order in the court, but she always comes with a couple boxes of Kleenex. And the job of our bailiff in teen court is basically to distribute Kleenex to the crying parent or the crying student, or in quite a few cases, she'll be distributing it to the kids who are acting as jurors. Once the kid really opens up and you find out what he's been through, and which gets me to, I think, the ultimate, and that's the ultimate in refining restorative skills, which is trauma-informed care.
Yeah.
And there's no way to take into account, especially in many of the populations we serve. You know, they are the sum total of their life experience, and some of those life experiences are just bad,
Right.
no, or terrible.
Terrible.
And without that knowledge, it's more difficult to work, you know, what we hope to work.
Yeah.
And uh, uh, you've got to get that trust to get to that information.
Yeah.
So what is your experience in doing training on trauma-informed care?
Yeah. I always think that, like it starts with not just kind of like, okay, tell me about your whole life. And you think that kids are just going to completely
Yeah.
open up about, that's like completely unrealistic. But like we need to regain the trust of these kids. But it starts with something as simple as a check-in. Like I might ask student Steve, hey, how you do? How checking in today? How are you? Like 1 through 10 on the scale of 1 through how you feeling? And you might tell me, well, you know what? I don't want to be here. I'm like a 2, and school sucks. And if I can just learn as an educator to say, thank you, Steve, for being authentic and keeping it real with me. And I want you to know that in any way that I can support you today, I'm here for you. That's all you have to do. So what happens in Steve's mind, if that is happening on a consistent basis in his school, what happens is Steve begins to go, you know what? This is a place that I can trust. I feel like, at least with Anthony, he will accept me and embrace me however I'm coming here today. And so that's the important thing, because sometimes what will happen is Steve will say something like, well, you know what? I think school sucks. I'm a 2 today. I don't really want to be here. And you know what adults say? They say, well, Steve, you should appreciate the fact that you have an education. Like, you shouldn't feel that way. And all that whole thing of you shouldn't feel that way is the most horrible, demeaning, like shutting people down kind of statement you can make. But I know in educators' minds, it's because they're uncomfortable with the truth. They're uncomfortable with, a lot of times the school has failed our kids because we have focused on grades over the human being. We have focused on their attendance levels over the human being. It always should be, the school should strive to say the human being is the most important thing in this school, period, barring none, not even close. Grades, attendance, behavior, none of that even comes close to the value of the human being. And every educator, every adult on that school campus should be trained and retrained to continually communicate to the Steves, Steve, I value you, I embrace you where you are, and I want you to know this, with me, you're safe, you're honored, you're valued.
Absolutely. In a case like that, I remember we had some students immigrating from Central America, and in this case, Honduras and Nicaragua. And I would ask them if they wanted to participate. I mean, I would try to sell it, but I didn't make anything but the base course mandatory.
Yeah.
It was up to me to get them to want to volunteer. That was my job for all the extra stuff.
Sure.
And so I would ask these kids, are you interested? Will you be there? Oh yeah, yes, Mr. L. We'll come to your meeting or to this court hearing, and they wouldn't show up.
Huh.
So I pulled them aside. I said, "Hey, you told me you were coming," and he said, "Well, we respect you, Mr. Leppy. You're an elder, and in our culture, you never say no to an elder." And I said, "It's a matter of respect." And I said, "So when you said, yes, you will be there, you knew you weren't coming. And they said, yes, we wouldn't want to offend you. So now, and this is early. I mean, I learned this, the first semester of teaching without any teaching education. And, but I had studied some of this stuff. And so what was my answer? I am so thankful that you trust me.
Wow.
And, it makes me feel so good that you're giving me this respect. However,
Yeah.
This is a new culture, and I'm glad you told me, and I'm glad I understand, and I am so happy that you were treating me with respect.
Right.
But we need to, this is another culture,
Yeah,
and
that's good.
we're going to have to work on it,
And there you go. See, you knew that the first step in your relationship with those kids was to acknowledge the positive. Like you could have said, don't you know to say you're going to show up and to not show up is completely irresponsible, immature, and disrespectful? That's what you could
which
have
was what was in my head when they didn't show up,
Right? But you look what you led with. You led with this. You led with, thank you that you respect me enough to even like say yes to me because you consider me an elder, and I appreciate that. That's where we have to start. Acknowledge the good, acknowledge the human connection, or that common ground that where we can connect. Then only then do we have a chance to help them come over here, right? And then we can help support them with the skills and to build their trust to even then show up the next time.
Yeah, it was a process. I mean, really, but that just has to do with, the richness of diversity.
Yeah.
At Crawford's the most diverse school,
Yeah,
probably in the world.
yeah.
We have 36 languages on campus,
Yeah.
and with 1,100 kids. But there is. My first year, I was retired and volunteering, and I started teaching. And that first year, that first semester, I mean, it was 4 or 5, 6 times a day that I was saying to myself, "What the heck are you doing here?
Yeah.
I could be on a golf course right now,
Yeah.
as I'm sweating and tearing my hair out."
Yeah.
Like my golf buddies would ask me, "What's it like?" And I would say, that first semester, it's hours and hours of frustration surrounded by moments of exhilaration. And that exhilaration turned into like a hit of heroin for a heroin addict. You wanted more and more of those.
Yeah.
And as you found out how to get more and more of them, guess what?
Yeah.
You got more and more.
You got more. So that's the key. It's a long process. Like you said, even with those Central American kids, it was a long process of restoring trust, restoring kind of this relationship between an elder and a child, and people that think that it's going to happen in one meeting or 2 meetings and it doesn't, and they get frustrated and then they revert back to what they know, which is power over people, which is oppression. That's what's wrong. That's what people are not trained. They're not prepared. Their capacity isn't there so that when they go into the classroom, so that they are prepared for this kind of thing, right? It's amazing that you stuck with it, but a lot of people either just leave because it's so frustrating, or they revert back to, well, you know what? If you're going to make my life hell, I'm going to make your life hell.
Yeah, that's when they start. I've seen that, and I've seen how the system has beat up teachers that I bet when they were young and coming out of college were, just ripe. I mean, just ready to rock and roll and teach. And then all of a sudden you turn around 20 years later and there's no energy. There's no energy. And I mean,
The joy.
they're teaching on the first Thursday of the second month of the first semester. They're teaching the same thing that they taught for the last 20 years. And
Yeah.
oh my God, I need the paycheck and I'm going to be here and I'll.
Yeah. It becomes almost
And,
like a survival thing. I just need my
yeah,
paycheck, my benefits, my retirement.
yeah. I don't want to imply that there's, that there's
Yeah, there's great people.
overwhelming numbers, because they're not. I mean, most of the people, I came from the private sector, and for my money, uh, most all of the people I meet in education are marvelous,
Yeah.
both in intention and the amount of work that they're willing to do.
Yes.
But it doesn't take too many burnouts to really mess with a young person's life, put them in a hole that is so hard to get out of. Well,
And
so
so,
what have you got? A couple of things. I know you're very busy, and I thank you for taking some time to talk with me, but I have two questions for you.
all right.
One is anything interesting on the horizon? And two is, if there are folks out there, you know, um, since COVID shut me out of working directly with kids, I'm basically viewing my job now as spreading the word,
Good.
however and wherever I can.
Good.
And are there any ways that somebody listening uh, who doesn't have any restorative training could get involved as a volunteer if they're so inclined?
Sure. I would say, if you're interested in this, email me. That's the best
Okay.
way. And it's ACEJA, which is my last name. So it's ACEJA at SDCOE. That's for San Diego County Office of Education, SDCOE.net.
.net.
So
I will put on the, I will, with your permission, then put your email
yeah,
on the little header next to your episode on the
absolutely.
podcast. Okay.
Please, I welcome people to contact me. I do a lot of communication with people all the time. And I'm probably going to invite you to come to our virtual trainings that we have. That's something we developed when COVID hit. And I honestly, tell you the truth, I didn't think it was going to work, but it worked quite well. So we have,
Great.
we have several trainings: introduction to restorative practices, building a restorative community virtually, the restorative conflict intervention, restorative leadership. We have our restorative practices collaborative that you've come to different times. We have we have a listserv of information that we'll send out sometimes that people can join. We have a Google Drive that people have helped to build up with information and videos and things like that for people more interested in it. So if you want, if you're listening right now, just know this: contact me, and I guarantee you, I will get back to you and I will connect you.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And I got to tell you, with COVID, and we had a tough COVID. My wife, in the middle of this, got colon cancer, and I had some health issues, and I was so out of it, and so I missed several of the collaborative meetings. But they're like mother's milk to me. We had one, was it last week, I think,
Yeah.
and it just felt so good. It'd been like 3 months since I'd been in a circle, virtual or otherwise, and it's just cleansing. As soon as Deb gave us the warm up. Yeah, mindfulness warm up. Yeah, Mother Earth.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think I call Deb Sadler my mentor of the metaphysical.
There you go.
She's got,
Yeah.
ideas that are a bit strange to me, but I honor her thought, and I know she is a good and sound heart.
Absolutely.
But I can tell you, when it was over, I was sorry it was over.
Yeah.
And I felt as good as I had in weeks.
Wow.
You know, it really is an amazing process, one that I never, you know, it never grew old to me, especially doing circles with kids. I mean, each one, you never know what's going to happen. You know?
And you said it earlier, Steve. You said every human being needs restoration. And so when we go to the collaborative meeting, I need it too. You need it. And most people tell me, just like I feel and you have expressed, I feel better. I feel like re-energized. Well, guess what? Because that's a part of our restorative, we're restoring ourselves, right? So that we can go on and do these podcasts and other things that people do to keep spreading this message.
So true. Anthony, I know you have a busy day, and I thank you so much for taking the time out. Please include me in anything you think I might be able to lend a hand. I'm living for these virtual meetings, so
Love it.
anything you think, just send it over. I'll be there.
Well, thank you.
Hopefully we can check in down the road and see how things are going.
And anytime, I always appreciate being able to connect with you, because that's part of my restoration. Yeah. So thank you for everything you're doing, everything you have done, and everything you continue to do as an elder in our community. And I really respect you and thank you.
Well, thank you. And hopefully I will see you virtually soon.
All right, let's do it. Thanks again.
And hopefully soon in person. That will be
right. Let's do that too. Take care, Steve.
Okay. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.